Hey everyone, and hello Dominique. Great to see you today. It's been a few weeks since we first connected, and I've really been enjoying our conversations about neuroscience, about psychology, and understanding how we can better apply that in the world of work and for for people in their everyday life and in their careers.
Absolutely. It's so nice to be here, Pavel. Thanks so much. I'm excited to hear more about your world, the coaching, the organizational psychology, and it'll be brilliant to just see how they all fit together, the neuroscience side as well, so that we can give some really good practical solutions for people who are going through that phase of life where maybe jobs are a little bit hard to find, maybe it's not as certain where they are now. So just giving them that strength and empowerment to be able to make whatever the next move is for them.
Yeah, absolutely. And uh, during one of our conversations, we've indeed thought it can be quite helpful for people out there who maybe are in between jobs, looking for their new opportunity, whether they have a job right now or not, to hear a little bit about the sort of stuff that we're talking about in terms of how can neuroscience, how can better understanding of our mindset, our emotional well-being, our psychology can help to have more clarity, make better decisions, and have a better experience in life as they're looking for that next step in their life and professional development. And so, Dominique, would you like to tell a little bit about yourself and what do you do?
Absolutely. So I'm the founder of Neuro Work, and I created that company because what I was seeing in the market was a little bit of a disconnect between lots of organizations planning change and putting in new IT systems, putting in lots of new structures and teams and all the rest, but they kind of forgot about the person at the center of it. So what I did was thought, well, you can bring the two together. So my background is neuroscience. It's why are we the way we are? And applying that in the context of organizations and personal change really makes sense. So if we understand what's going on in our brains during those times of change, then actually we can decide what we want to get out of it. And if you're in an organization, you can decide to get engagement, some more purpose, a bit of excitement, creativity, and unlock all of that in your people. So neuroscience helps us with being the best that we can be. So that's what I set up Neuro Work. And Pavel, what's your organization?
Yeah, my name is Pavel Golenistsev. I am a founder of Business Purpose. By education, I'm a business psychologist. Basically, this means that throughout my career, I've been focusing on things like how can businesses create better teams? How can they hire people who will really be enjoying the work that they're doing? How to make sure everyone's having a great experience at work? Because we do spend at least 1/3 of our lives at work. The other 1/3 of our lives we spend sleeping, and the other 1/3, hopefully, we're not spending worrying about work. I've
Absolutely.
created my company to help people have better experiences at work, to make sure that business leaders know what steps they need to take to ensure better employee experience. And I also work one-on-one with professionals who may feel a bit stuck in their career, who are really looking for a change and would like some support and clarity in their mind to achieve the change that they're looking for.
Brilliant.
Uh,
That's awesome.
Dominique, I'm really excited about our conversation today. And I guess for us to start, something that I've been always been finding fascinating and insightful about our conversations and about the field of neuroscience in general is that we can understand so much about our behavior and how we are by talking about brain processes and understanding brain a little bit better. Could you tell us a bit more about what's going on with our brains when we're out there looking for new opportunities?
Absolutely. So that's the one thing that we have common across all of us as humans. We all have brains. So this is going to be something that's going on for all of us and can help all of us. Now, the thing about job searching and in fact leaving a job, it has a really big impact on lots of areas of our lives. So when we leave a job from one day to the next, we actually lose all of that continual connection that we had with our teams and colleagues. Some of them will be friends as well. And when we lose or leave a job, we actually lose part of our daily routine. So as you said, 1/3 of our life is spent at work. So 1/3 of our daily routine is suddenly gone overnight. There's a lot more ambiguity when we're not working in our daily lives, ambiguity of where will the next job come from, where we'll be able to put pay the bills? Was it about me? Was it about the company? There's lots of uncertainty and a slight loss of confidence. Now, all of that from a brain point of view triggers a fear response in the brain. And that inhibits the parts of your brain that are responsible for things like rational thinking, forward planning, and the parts that control and regulate our emotions. So actually, while we're in that kind of state of flux where we don't have a job, actually we're in a very emotional part of our lives. And when we're thinking about how that might impact our day-to-day and what we do to find a new job, actually it could be quite hard to get ourselves back into a brain state where we're feeling empowered, where we're feeling productive, creative, where we've got that energy to be able to go and find the next opportunity, whatever that looks like. So that as a basis is kind of where we can start to have a look, well, what comes next actually? What can we do to be able to stop ourselves modeling those worst case scenarios, which is what our brain loves to do, and start to model some positive scenarios, I'm going to be in a job, what does that job look like? While we're in that, of course, we can start to feel quite anxious and fearful. And I know that that's something, Pavel, that you've seen in your day-to-day from both a personal coaching and an organizational level. So I'd love to hear, having heard that context of what's going on in the brain, how do you put that into practice from your side?
Dominique, what you're saying is really, it really resonates with me. It makes perfect sense. And I know that this is something that is very real for my coaching clients, something that I've seen throughout my conversations when I support professionals who are looking for a new role, who are trying to network more, be more out there, and who are interested in improving their performance during interviews, is that when we are worried, it's a fight or flight response, right? Our brain just shuts down, and I've heard it several times. People get into this tunnel thinking mode when they cannot really think clearly about what's going on. They can be asked the most basic question that they know how to reply easily, but they're a bit worried. They don't know how to reply to it. They start worrying more because they recognize that they're worrying and aren't performing at their best, and then they're worried even more. And then what happens is that next time they have an interview, they have a similar situation, it's like our brain learns that the past experiences will be defining the future state of being. And that's when, for their next interview, that person is even more stressed, more worried, and that's really getting to them. And the way around that is actually understanding first that our past experiences do not define us. This is just one moment in time, but also understanding what is it that's going on for a person that may be causing that sort of reaction when they're out there making a difficult decision, being in a situation that they would rather not be in, or being in a job interview for that matter. And I often talk about the basic understanding that our brain has formed tens of thousands of years ago. It's not meant for Zoom calls, for office jobs, for interviews, for webinars, for all of those wonderful things, and not so wonderful, that we have right now. But the brain is really made for survival and for making sure that I will be accepted by my community, by my tribe, in this case, by the people who are interviewing me. That's why it can be provoking so much stress, so much worry, and so much anxiety about the overall state of finances, of well-being, of paying mortgage and all that. But in the end of the day, that's not putting our mind in the optimal state for working. Well, I'd love to hear your perspective, Dominique. How can we make sure that our mind is working more in that sort of optimal state when we can really have the clarity of thinking and perform at our best?
Absolutely. And just going back to a point you made, Pavel, yeah, the last brain hardware upgrade was 200,000 years ago. That was a big one. And that's bananas when you think about how much that world has changed in that time, and especially even over the past 20 years. So as you said, entirely, kind of this whole idea of connecting virtually, where we're not physically in the same room, we're physiologically wired in a different way. So this is a whole new area for our brain to kind of cope with. But luckily, there are things that we can do to get ourselves into that positive brain state. And I'll share a couple of quick hacks with you now. The first one is actually to understand that when we form memories, the brain encodes the memory with the state that it was in at the time. So when we bring to mind that memory, actually our brain relives that chemical state again. So if we're thinking about a happy memory, when we bring that to mind, the brain actually has all of the happy-making chemicals activated again in the brain. And that's a good thing, because among those chemicals is dopamine. And dopamine is involved in the idea of creative thought. When you get yourself into a dopamine positive state, that means you're coming out of the threat state, that fight or flight survival mode, and you're coming into that, activating the areas of the brain that are involved in all of that forward planning, creative thought, all of the bits of the brain that help regulate that threat state. So bringing to mind a happy memory, try to think of all of the parts of it. So the sight, the smells, the sounds around, make it as detailed as you can. And the more detailed you make it, the more the brain will activate the happy state that was in when it was encoded. So on the flip side of that, thinking of an unhappy memory puts your brain into an unhappy state. So if possible, and then it's actually hard when you're in a threat state to not think unhappy thoughts, but if possible, try and move away from those worst case scenarios and try and move away from remembering those negative experiences that you may have had before when you were in an interview. So that's the kind of key thing, is to think of a happy state, think of a happy memory. Now, another way, if you're thinking, God, that's actually a bit too far away from what I can actually do, I'm in too much of a negative state to bring to mind a lovely holiday memory because I don't know when the next one's going to come. I know a lot of us in the pandemic were thinking that at the start. Well, another hack is to laugh. Laughing immediately flips our brain out of a threat state and into a positive state as well. So if you can pop on your favorite comedian, comedy show, talk jokes, ask if you've got a partner who's particularly funny, get them up, get them ready, get them beer, just get them to chat to you. Basically, laughing can put you straight into that positive state. It's also really good exercise, a good belly laugh, great for the old core muscles. So you'll be also keep this side of life up as well. So those are the two quickest and easiest ways to get yourself out of the survival, flight or flight mode and into something that's a little bit more what we call executive thinking in the neuroscience world. And it's that executive thinking that will really help you then take charge of your day and retake control. And I think there's one thing to say, when we get ourselves into that brain state that's really positive, don't necessarily think that you can then change the world and immediately change your life. So when we are in areas of change in our life, we are very easily overwhelmed. So we can quickly split back into a threat state if we try and do too much too soon. Like our computers, our brains are limited capacity machines. So they have a limit. And so if you can think that when you're in a positive state, have a think about what small tasks you can do. Small tasks are great because they don't overwhelm you, but also when we achieve a task, that dopamine, that happy chemical that really helps put us in a creative state, a positive state, is activated as well. So checking something off your to-do list, feeling as if you've completed something, will put you in a brain state to then be able to do more after. So that's the kind of cool things that I think will really help you move from that inaction and overwhelming anxiety to that first step of being able to do something positive and something that you feel in control of.
Dominique, those are like really amazing tips. Something like the thinking more positively, making sure that we sort of have control over our emotions, over how we're feeling, and pulling that switch between the how negative thinking, I'm like everything's horrible and nobody likes me and I'm about to go on an interview like I'm about to fight a tiger 200,000 years ago, to something positive, something that I also recommend my clients when they're going to an interview, when they're about to dial in on a call that they're feeling a little bit anxious about, is I say, well, imagine that you are about to chat with an old friend, or when you're meeting a new person, just taking the anxiety, the worry out of meeting with a stranger or having high stakes. Imagine that you're walking in your hometown, wherever that may be, and you just spot an old school friend and you're so happy and you're relaxed, and just actually smile. And when we smile like that, we're not just like smiling because someone told us you should be smiling during an interview, but we actually smile with our eyes, our voice, our face becomes a little bit more relaxed, our heartbeat slows down, and that's how we can think more creatively and have a meaningful connection with people.
I
And
love that. That's such a lovely idea. Brilliant. I will do that next time I have a call that's important.
it really works for me, and I know that it works for others too, so I can recommend that. And Dominique, I think that's something that's very important that you've mentioned there is the idea of taking control of our own mind, and I think this is absolutely crucial. We want to make a clear distinction between the things that we can control and that we cannot control. Things that we cannot control are like to an extent the current economic situation, what's going on with the world, the current job market, the how other people are behaving or choosing to treat us, what's the weather like outside. And if we cannot control it, the best thing we can do is not worry about it as much as possible. And there are things that we can control. Like, do we do all those exercises that you have been describing? How do we actually perceive things? How do we take on board new information? How well are we treating other people? Are we trying to make their life easier when they're interviewing us, when they're connecting with us, when they're trying to help us out? And in general, making sure that we focus only on the things that's what I can control, and I'm going to do my best to do that. Everything else, I'm going to let it go as much as possible. I think that's absolutely important for well-being and getting things done.
Absolutely. I spent quite a lot of time in Manchester in my youth. It rains 99% of the time. I think I learned that lesson early. You cannot control the weather, so let's just get on and smile through it. Just control.
Absolutely.
So, brilliant.
I think on this note, it would be interesting to talk a bit about, so let's say we've taken the time to take control of our mind a bit better. We've done all of those wonderful neuroscience, psychology, and mindset exercises, and they're really helping us to be a bit more in the zone, a bit more focused. What would you say is next? What do we do to really make the most of that productive, high-performing state of mind that we're in?
Absolutely. So I would go back to the idea of make sure that you structure yourself to have lots of small tasks you can complete during a day to maintain that positive place. So your mind, your mental energy will burn down a lot less quickly if you do that. And I think one thing that's key as well to frame up to keeping that positive mindset a little bit longer is to, in your day, find a new routine. So losing your routine gave you a lot more ambiguity in your life, a lot more uncertainty, and the brain doesn't like uncertainty. It goes to dark places when it has uncertainty. So create yourself a routine with lots of small tasks you can complete during the day, and that will be the perfect framework to actually do some big picture thinking. So a lot of time between jobs is about the opportunities that you haven't yet known are out there. When you're in a positive mindset, have a think a little bit more about, well, actually, what did I love about my job? What did I not love so much? Create that list. Make sure you verbalize it. Verbalizing things, whether it's chatting to someone about it or writing it down, is a way of the brain to clarify how it feels or what it thinks about something. It helps encode that state. So I think having a look and having that list and then seeing, actually, does this mean I'm looking for exactly the same job next? Or does it mean I'm actually looking at different questions? And so that's a really kind of good way when you keep that clarity at that list to frame some really big, exciting ideas that your brain is in the right state to think about. And I know, Pavel, that's something you really help people drill down into in your coaching, because it's very easy for us, especially with the brain being a survival prediction machine, to think, well, we'll just do the same as we did last time because we know we survived during that process. So you really help clients in terms of exploring to break that natural tendency that we have to have habits in our work life as well as in our personal life, and think big. So what would you say if I was here and I'm saying, okay, neuroscience I've loved, but I've lost it. What should I do next? What would you kind of suggest to me in terms of thinking big picture?
You, I think you've touched on several very important points there, Dominique. One of them is that idea of remembering I've done this before, so I can do it again, or I can step outside of my comfort zone just a little bit more, expand this circle of competence, circle of comfort a little bit more. Like, I've worked with some people who are inspiring professionals and leaders in their field, who are absolutely amazing at what they're doing, and they can manage complex negotiations and workshops for tens and hundreds of professionals. And when they are at an interview, they feel like they're back at school. They feel like they're being chastised by their teacher or something like that, and they're not comfortable at all. So just remembering, well, tell me about the time when you actually succeeded in a situation like that, and what's actually different about it. And it's not the same situation anyway. I think it's almost like in a way, it's a question of understanding that nothing bad can happen with you really in this situation anyway. And our brain does recognize it as a situation of like life and death. I have to do this. It's that's why you can get so afraid during an interview or during important negotiations. But in the end of the day, nothing's going to happen to you. And your brain just needs that reminder, because our brains have evolved to focus on the immediate danger in front of them and not think about big picture. What we can think about big picture when we're relaxed, when we know that there is no threat to our existence, there is no threat to our immediate well-being. And when we are in this state of negativity, something that can happen is that we are more tuned into seeing neutral cues in the negative light. This person looked at me in the wrong way. That person didn't smile to me for some time. This person said they didn't quite like my idea. Maybe it's absolutely neutral. It's just a feedback from the environment coming in. But we take it as something negative because we're under stress, because our mind wants us to take it as something negative, just in case it's a question of survival. Now, telling ourselves that I'm fine, I'm okay, there's nothing else to do, there is nowhere to go, I'm fine just as I am. I know that I'm here at this interview because they want me to be here. I know that I'm among, well, friends. I'm among the people who are actually investing time, their organization's money, workforce, to interview me, to see what I can do. They want me to be here. They're not here to make me fail. Recognizing that and remembering that in the end of the day, you already have all the clarity, and you know that you are there because you've earned being there. You are there because throughout your career, you've been doing all of those great things to be there right now. So many people ask me, well, how do I get that clarity about my next steps? About what should I say? What should I do? Well, the clarity is already within us. Just that all of our past experiences, all of our worries, fears, they cloud our mind for clarity, and we're afraid of judgment, we're afraid of what others will say, we're afraid of failure, as if failure is something that we should avoid at all means. But there is no failure, there is only feedback, and clarity is already within us. It's out there. Once we understand that, and once we understand that everything else is just our mind's attempt to have our best interests by making us focus on the immediate thing and sometimes underperform, so to keep us safe. Once we recognize that, then we know that our big picture thinking, our clarity is already there.
So true. It's so true. And when we can get ourselves into that big picture thinking, when we're in a creative space, that neutrality that you mentioned, where if we're in a threat state, actually a neutral input is treated as a threat, as a negative, and put into the worst case scenario planning. Actually, when we're in the creative space and we're starting to let ourselves think, that neutrality goes in the opposite direction. So it's seen as that opportunity, and you start to build best case scenarios out of that. So it's one of those kind of self-perpetuating cycles either way. And it's in our lives, it's always nicer to choose the positive spiral upwards rather than negative if we can. That's brilliant. I love that experience. And I think the one thing with interviews is that I always end up remembering that people are people. The people across the other side to us are actually human beings as well. So they're going through similar processes and we're all in it together. So yes, they've devoted time. They're actually interested. They've had me for interview and they're human. So actually from that point of view, we're all the same. So that helps kind of disarm that feeling of being on the back foot, kind of maybe not having the same control because you're being interviewed rather than being the interviewer. Actually, we're all human. And because of that, that means that more likely than not, we're going to have a connection, because that's what we want to do as humans. We want to connect. So yeah.
That's very well said, and such a powerful reminder. We're all human. It's one of those things that are so basic that it's incredibly easy to forget. The simple truth that we're all human. We're all going through pretty much similar challenges, while at the same time, all of us is experiencing world in their own different, unique way. We're all experiencing those same challenges. Just some of us choose not to talk about them that much, and then we think that maybe it's just me who's experiencing this or that thing, but most of us do. And the interviewer, the person who is making a decision, or someone else in front of you who you may be anxious talking with, they have experienced that before in one form or another, maybe more, maybe less than you. And actually something that I often remind to job seekers is that probably interviewer is under much more stress than you are. Just remember that. Like I've been an interviewer myself. There's so much information you have to go through. You'll be responsible to an extent for the recommendation you make. There's so much data. You want to make the best possible experience for your candidate. And it's so stressful. Just think in terms of compassion. Like that person in front of you, they may be going through so much more than you're going through right now, but they have to look as serious and professional as they're sitting there in front of you. And having that a bit more of a compassionate attitude is something that can help us to remember that we're all just human. We are all just trying to do our best to do whatever we're here to do. And once we recognize that, we can relax a little bit more. We can have more clarity and approach whichever steps we need to take with a new focus.
Absolutely, 100% all of that. And I think when you're there at interview as well, so the interviewer, you're there because there's a need to be filled and you are potentially that need. So I think it helps just to even put that on the table at the start. As you said, the interviewer is stressed. The interviewer is there with their pieces of paper, their frameworks, all the things they've got to do, things they're trying to take notes of at the same time. And actually, the whole point of the interview is to find out, can you fit the need they're looking for? So a way to just, I guess, diffuse some of that built up tension that's on both sides of the interviewer and the interviewer is just to ask and say, open the interview and say, so it looks like a really interesting role, read about your company. Could you just explain in your own words what it is you need? And that actually just helps disarm, and it helps relieve that tension a lot more from the outset. And then you've got that connection without it being just within those papers and those competency questions that people love.
Yes, absolutely. Just starting with saying, it's like one of the best ways to start a conversation and to form a meaningful connection with someone is just say, how can I help you? Or have at the back of your mind and as an intention, how can I help this person?
Exactly.
First, and secondly, in networking context, something that I recognize to people is think, how can I help this person first? Second, how can I make sure that this person knows how they can help me? And I think that's all it is. In the end of the day, networking working businesses. It's all about people trying to help other people to have a better experience at life, because we do spend so much time at work or awake worrying about work, and everyone just wants to have a little bit of a better experience moment to moment.
Absolutely. We want to survive. That's what our brain is trying to do. So if there's other people to help us do that, we'll just immediately make connection and build that trust.
Yeah, yeah.
And I mean, that's a really great point as well, Pavel. So going through, when we're job hunting, our network is actually really, really key. And I think most people will have a network established and will also be looking to grow a network. So what are your kind of tips for reaching out and asking for help and finding new people who might be able to help?
Yep, great question. So absolutely, network is very important. Networking is so key for us to form those connections, to create more of serendipity. When we're out there, we never know what this or that connection can bring to us. But by being open to creating those new connections and having at the back of our mind this intention, I'm here to help others, and I need to make sure that others know how they can help me, we can create some of the most meaningful conversations, professional relationships, and support others better and help others help us in a way that makes the world a better place, works for you, works for that other person. In terms of reaching out to people, I think something that's absolutely key when especially when we have the social media, online tools like LinkedIn, is remembering that each and every one of us has their unique set of skills, talents, experiences that are quite unique to just you as an individual. Maybe you know what they are. Many of us may not have the clarity about what those are exactly, but there is absolutely always something that you can share with the world that will make the world a better place and will help you to create new opportunities along the way. Being out there, being a little bit of a leader, bravely sharing your insights, your thoughts with your network, asking this question, how can I help you? How can I help this person? What can I do for them? Is something that can help you eventually find new opportunities and really supercharge your career and create some amazing connections and experiences for your professional life along the way.
Brilliant. Absolutely. I love that idea. What would you say then? What would you want to help people most with then? What's your helpful thing that you share at networking?
Yeah, so for me, because something that I do is one-on-one coaching for professionals, and I also do workshops about high-performing teams and organizations, what they can do to make sure that the psychology of their team and their leadership and their managers is on top, is I have conversations about that. What's going on for your team? What's going on for you at the moment? How can I help you? I ask a few questions. I often also share my insights through the format of a newsletter, and I will include a link to my newsletter if you'd like to get more insights of the sort of that we have discussed with Dominique today. And I think it really is about understanding what's going on for the person and then seeing, can I help this person? If I can help them, then how? Or if that's not quite in my area of expertise, who should I connect them with? Like, should they talk to Dominique about neuroscience? Should they talk to someone else about some other aspect? And just being that person who helps others to connect, helps others to learn, helps others to overcome challenges in their life. I think that's why essentially we're all here, and that's what the purpose of networking platforms and networking is. How about you, Dominique?
So we're obviously quite in similar fields. We've got a similar outlook on what life and love and work and everything should be about. Humans, humanity, humane, everything linked to that. So what I help most is helping people understand themselves so that then they can understand those around them. and implementing those in really practical ways that mean that either their home lives or their work lives are structured around ways that work with the brain rather than against it. So the idea is that you can spend most majority of your time at work. So when I'm working with organizations, I help them understand, well, what does the workplace look like when we have people who work together in a way that connects, in a way that understands, and in a way that puts you in the best flow state, which is that really positive, creative part of your brain. So I help by setting that up. And like you said, Pavel, it's about asking. There's a lot of listening going on involved, because actually it's what are the things that are holding you back that we can help the most with. And parts of occupational psychology, parts of neuroscience are the answer to removing those blockers that people at the moment need the most help with, especially during times of intense change, where with the best will in the world, a lot of us are overwhelmed by what's going on, both in personal and professional lives. So it's about sitting down with people and just finding out what those blockers are, what neuroscience says about them, and then converting them into something that's really practical, where people have the toolkits and the processes to empower themselves to take the best out of any situation. So in the same way, I'll be doing some follow-up calls. So you've got your newsletter, and I recommend it to everyone. It's brilliant. I'll be doing up some follow-up webinars about areas of life control. So social media, taking back control from that. In the workplace, if you've got some issues with culture clash or engagement, people are not connected to the purpose in the same way that you used to be, what are the practical things you can set up to do that? And what are the things to most look out for during change? What are the things we most often do that actually unwittingly put us into that threat state? And we don't think they would, but they do. So helping people, I'm just sharing as much information as I can, especially now when there's just so much and people need so much help. It's a time to be able to share that as much as possible. So I'll be including links on my website to those as well.
Yeah. Dominique, thanks so much for this conversation. It's been amazing it's always great to have a conversation with you. It's been an amazing chat with you today, talking about neuroscience, seeing how we can help out others based on our insights from the neuroscience field, the field of business psychology and coaching. And for the benefit of our listeners, you can see on the screen the ways you can connect with Dominique and myself. And feel free to reach out, feel free to follow our events, our newsletters, understand what we're up to, and we'll be very happy to share with you more of our experience, knowledge, insights through one-on-one conversations and on social media. Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Dominique.
Thank you, Pavel. Thanks, everyone, as well. Take care, everyone.
Bye.